Hello and welcome back to Karma Stories. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have some stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. At the end of this one, I talk a little bit about malicious compliance and the future of it on this channel slash podcast. So check that out when you get to the end of the video. Alright, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right in. This story comes to us from Derwin. Sales sucks. The following is an old story from years ago, but I thought it would be worthy of sharing here. I, now 53 male, then around 20 male, used to work for a now defunct electronics retailer called Circuit City in Southern California. The staff was paid on a commission basis and were pressed daily to sell our extended warranty packages as a way to increase revenue. To explain how the extended warranties work is to explain how the company made most of its income by scamming not only the customers, but also its suppliers. How it worked is thus. When a customer comes in and wishes to purchase a product, they're offered an extended warranty. So if anything happens to the product, they simply bring it back and it would get repaired by an on-site department. If it could not be repaired, it would be replaced. The room for the repair department was a 5x5 foot closet with a shelf, and customer service was instructed to carry the product into that room, put it on the shelf, and return 15 minutes later to pick it up. Bring it back to the customer with the unfortunate information that it could not be repaired, but would have to be replaced. The customer would then leave the store with a new product, and the store would send the product back to the manufacturer as defective, never having inspected it in the first place, while at the same time taking a full credit on the product and receiving a full credit for it. So the company was able to minimize the cost of labor while simultaneously receiving income from both sides, the supplier and the manufacturer. Now, here's where the story begins. I worked as a salesman on the floor in the department that sold the items that could not be clumped together neatly, such as sections for televisions, stereo equipment, kitchen appliances, laundry machines, refrigerators, etc. At the time, this included Walkman, the precursor to the iPod, which utilized cassette tapes, mini disc players, CD Walkman, and desktop computers and accessories such as monitors, printers, and various other items attached to computers. This was prior to laptops being ubiquitous, so all of these items were bulky and heavy. One day, a guy came in ratty clothing, sweating from head to toe, and stinking like he hadn't showered in a week. The other salesmen and women decided he was not worth their time, and I got instructed to help him while security was called to escort him off the premise. I found out he was in the shop to get a replacement Walkman as while out for a run, the one he had failed. I walked him over to the shelf that had all the portable music devices, and after listening to what he was looking for, did not direct him to the most expensive product we sold, attempting to upsell him, but providing him with the most affordable option for what he was looking to purchase. He even asked about the extended warranty, and I told him not to bother with it. He paid for the Walkman and left before security could arrive, and I made maybe $2 on the sale. For the next 2 weeks, I got hounded by the other salespeople and managers that I was not pushing the warranties enough, depriving myself of the sales income that comes with it, thus losing money in the process. About 2 weeks later, when I arrived at work, I was told there was a customer who had come in, asked about me, and left, telling them he'd return when I did. After a few minutes of being on the floor, a man, the same one that had been sweaty, arrived in a full suit, expensive at that, flanked by 2 others in business suits asking for me. Turns out he runs multiple private schools and was looking to purchase a few computers for them, without all the extended frills that were unnecessary. Now, the computer sales at the time were the crown jewels on the sales floor, and if a salesman sold one, they were king of the hill of the sales force that week. This guy wanted 10 of them for his students to use, and I was personally requested by him to be the one to make those sales. I walked him through what we had, and the final bill was over $15,000, blowing away the next biggest sale that year by $10,000. When it came time to pay me and hand me the biggest check that store had written that year, the staff decided to hold a ceremony in my honor and asked me to speak to encourage others that there was money to be made. I only said 4 words, "Thank you, I quit," and walked out of the ceremony, got into my car, and drove home, never to go back to that store again. I think one thing that anybody in sales who's been there for a while knows is that you can never prejudge a customer. Just like in OP's case, the person was out for a run and they came in out of necessity because their Walkman died. At least take the time to go up and talk to somebody when they come in, regardless of how they look. You can make your judgment on whether they're a serious buyer or not within the first couple of seconds of a conversation, usually. Also, thanks a lot, OP, for making me feel old, because my generation definitely knows what a Walkman and a Discman are, but I'm guessing that the newer generations don't, and that's kinda sad. This story comes to us from Common Employee. Supervisor says phones are all that matter? Okay then. So this actually happened a few months ago at my job. Long story short, coworker got promoted to a new supervisor position for all the wrong reasons. She's besties with the boss and gives him relationship advice on the side. Our team handles many types of incoming requests, phone calls, emails, tickets, and even printer jobs that get printed out automatically. We have a really chill system that actually works. Everyone helped where needed, and the manager trusted us to get the work done. Nobody tracked individual stats or micromanaged. We just got everything handled and kept things running smoothly, and it's been that way in this department for probably 30 years now. Then my new supervisor comes along and I guess decides she wants to tighten things up or increase accountability or something. Her big idea? From now on, I'll be tracking phone calls for performance metrics, make sure everyone's doing their job and no one's slacking. So of course we asked, what about tickets and emails? Those take most of the time. She says, well, there's no way to measure those right now, so we can't really track that. Okay. So of course, everyone does exactly what she asked. Phone rings, answer it immediately. If we were working on an email and a phone call comes in, put it on pause and answer the call. Working on a ticket, pause, gotta answer a call. So naturally, emails start piling up in the shared mailbox, tickets sit untouched in the internal portal, which management still doesn't know how to run reports on, and the printer starts piling up paper in front of it. After a couple of days, people from other departments, people from our satellite offices, and even some of our external customers start emailing and calling and asking if we're backed up because nobody is responding to tickets or emails. One guy even came down in person to ask why no one has reached out to him about the email he sent in. When asked what was going on, we just repeated what supervisor told us. Focus on the phones since that's what matters. A few days later, I saw the supervisor get called into a meeting with the boss. When she comes out, she's clearly annoyed and sends out a message on Teams saying, please remember that all work types are important, not just phone calls. And just like that, the performance tracking policy quietly vanished. We're back to doing all the work again, the same way we've been doing it successfully for years. OP added a quick edit at the bottom. It says, edit. It seems a lot of people do not understand workflow. Before, if a ticket or email comes in, you take yourself off the phone queue to work it. But now, why am I going to take myself off the phone queue to work a ticket if it'll look like I'm doing no work? Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Long Pig Taylor. It says, wants to track performance, but refuses to learn how to track performance via tickets. Kind of the entire reason a ticketing system even exists. Yeah, this checks out. Okay, so my question on this one is, how were things working previously if OP was told to focus on the phones and everything got backed up? They said that previously everything was just working fine, which would have meant the phone and the emails and everything else was being handled properly. So if they were being told to focus on the phones and everything went to crap, there must have been something wrong with the system before. This story comes to us from BlueBoy714. Okay, I won't answer my old staff's questions and help them. Before I retired, I was manager and programmer in a department located in the US. I would program, manage, assign projects, create timelines, answer questions that my staff had, etc. The company I worked for decided to consolidate the US and UK programming departments, and the new boss decided to have only managers in the UK oversee the programmers in the US. This meant that I was only supposed to keep programming. I had the most experience among all of the US-UK programmers, and no longer needed to do the management side of things, but I still got the same pay I used to. Due to a 6-hour time difference between the US and UK, that meant that there were only 2 or 3 hours each day that we overlapped. This left the rest of the day for my old staff to either wait until the next day to ask their new boss, or come to me and I could answer immediately. The latter made more sense so they could keep working. But eventually, the UK managers explained to US-UK boss, that the US staff wasn't coming to them to help and were still coming to me, which the UK managers were having a conniption about. My boss told me to stop helping my old staff when they asked me questions and that they needed to ask their new manager. So it was time for malicious compliance. I went back to only programming, and when my old staff came and asked me questions, usually in the afternoon US time, since the UK was done for the day, I told them I was told to no longer help them and they should ask their new UK manager the next day or send their UK boss an email with their question. I told them it was time for malicious compliance, since the US programmers knew exactly what would happen. So my old team started deluging their UK bosses with questions, problems, etc., and then had to wait until the next day or two to get an answer. Within 2 weeks, the US team was missing deadlines, etc., and the UK managers had to answer for why their team was missing deadlines. After a couple more weeks, my boss and the UK managers came to the realization that due to the 6-hour time difference, there should be a manager in the US, which is exactly what I told them weeks ago. Finally, my boss asked me if I would like to be a manager again, and I told her I was happy just programming and didn't need the other work. They ended up offering me a raise in order to get me back to managing the US programmers. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Visa Triani. It says, managers never seem to realize what will happen when people need to wait for an answer to something from coworkers on the other side of the world. This story actually made me wonder just how efficient this department is if they need to ask so many questions on a daily basis to their manager to get their job done. Like, they were allowed to ask questions to the UK manager, and there was a deluge of them that went out to that manager. Okay, what's going on here? I don't know, let me know what you all think on this one in the comments if you're on YouTube or on Spotify, but to me, it just sounds like the whole thing wasn't managed properly in the first place. This story comes to us from Crush55. Countermand orders get smoked. Backstory: I was in a desert country that was very hot while in the military. I was one of the newer members to the group when they gave us a free plane ride out there. My job was not combat oriented in any way, and far away from most danger. However, because I was newer, instead of a normal weapon to carry daily, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, I was assigned the heavy size. After about a month into this, me and the other people assigned this weapon are complaining. We do not need these readily available, as our job is not to provide immediate defense. I worked in a section that consistently dealt with warrant officers. To those not in the know, these WOs are very known for their no-nonsense, get the job done in the best way possible without messing with the standard. They are the keepers of the standards and would expect nothing less. One day, a warrant officer 5 saw me carrying this weapon and asked me why I had it. I explained it was the weapon assigned to me, and as an officer, he replied, "I have a pistol. My substantially lighter weapon is in the armory. Tell them to exchange my heavy for this." I am through the moon after the exchange. I go to the smoke pit and show off my new weapon. Eventually, my first line supervisor sees me and asks how I got it. I explain the orders given to me. He responds with, "Is he your frontline supervisor?" He makes me resubmit my new weapon for the old. Now the fun part. I worked in an area where sometimes we went to where the WOs were on assignment. I took the job to go deliver something, and the WO5 sees me with the old weapon. He asks if I had a chance to exchange. I reply I did, but my sergeant said to change it back. His response was, "Did you tell him it was my order?" "Yes, sir." "Okay, OP, follow me." Anybody who has an idea of the army knows that a WO5 outranks a sergeant by a mile, so countermanding his orders better have a good excuse. When we get to the sergeant's office and the WO5 asks him what happened, the sergeant gave some BS excuse. Then the WO5 said snap to attention. WOs, as a rule, don't adhere to normal standards. The WO5 then excused me, told me to switch weapons, and locked the door. I stayed just long enough to hear a lot of yelling curse words and counting push-ups. Okay, I'm not a military person and I don't begin to understand how all the different ranks there work. However, in the comments for this one, I can see that a Warrant Officer 5 seems to be more of a mythical creature than somebody people would see on a regular basis. And so a sergeant doing a countermand of orders from a WO5 seems to be a very, very bad idea. Again, I don't really know what I'm talking about here though, so fill me in the comments down below if you're on YouTube or on Spotify. This story comes to us from Coyote Top 4112. Boss said document everything, so I documented everything. I work in IT support for a mid-sized company. Been there about 4 years, never had any issues until we got a new manager about 6 months ago. Let's call him Derek. Derek is one of those micromanagement types who doesn't actually understand what we do, but loves to act like he invented technology. He's always asking for metrics and documentation and making us fill out these stupid forms for every little thing. Couple weeks ago, I'm helping out one of the sales guys with a pretty standard issue. His Outlook wasn't syncing properly. Takes me maybe 20 minutes to fix. I send Derek the usual ticket summary. Derek calls me into his office the next day, says my documentation is insufficient and that I need to be more thorough. He literally says, I want you to document everything, every single step, every click, everything. I tried to explain that's gonna make tickets take way longer to close, but he cuts me off. I don't want excuses. Document everything. Do you understand? I understand. So I start doing exactly what he asked. Every ticket now gets a full novel, and I mean full. 9:47 a.m. Received ticket from Janet in HR regarding printer issue. Walked from my desk 14 steps to printer room on second floor. Checked printer display, error code displayed. Googled error code in my phone. Result suggested a paper jam. Open front panel of printer, used both hands, panel was stuck slightly, required moderate force. Observed paper jam in rear roller assembly. You get the idea. I'm talking timestamps for everything. How many steps I walked, which hand I used to click the mouse. If I had to Google something, I document the exact search terms and which result I clicked. My tickets went from like 2 to 3 paragraphs to 4 to 5 pages each. I'm spending almost as much time documenting as actually fixing things. My closed ticket count drops by about 40%. This goes on for 2 weeks. Then, last Friday, Derek calls a team meeting. He's all flustered, says our department's metrics are unacceptable, and wants to know why ticket resolution has slowed down so much. I very calmly pull up one of my recent tickets and ask if he wants me to read through my documentation. He says yes. I start reading out loud every single word. About 3 minutes in, he tells me to stop. Says, this is ridiculous. Nobody needs this much detail. I remind him in front of the whole team that he specifically told me to document everything, every single step, every click, everything. One of my coworkers actually had to leave the room because she was trying not to laugh. Derek just stares at me for like 10 seconds and then says, just use your best judgment going forward, and ends the meeting. I'm back to normal documentation now. He hasn't micromanaged me since. Still worth it. We've heard a number of stories on malicious compliance that are along the exact same lines as this last one, and I need to ask you all, do you feel like these stories are just people trying to get karma on Reddit at this point, and they're just parroting what they've heard before? Or are they possibly even using AI to create new stories? Because they're sounding so similar that it's kind of making me not really want to read a heck of a lot from Malicious Compliance anymore. I'd love for you to drop your comments down below on YouTube or on Spotify and let me know what you think on this issue. But one thing's for certain, I think we need to branch out into more subreddits and cover more stories from different places like relationships and things like that. I don't know, I think maybe it's just time for a change and to branch out into a lot more subreddits and kind of have some fun with this again. Alright, let's go ahead and end this episode here. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to follow us on your preferred podcasting platform. If you're on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really does help us out. I thank you all for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.